Okay, so now we're going to be creating an entire page in your sketchbook of a Zentangle. To get started, a lot of times with the Zentangles, it's a good idea to have some sort of border. So since this is just practice, you do not have to use any sort of ruler or straight edge to outline these. But when you do get to your final sketchbook cover, I would highly recommend using a ruler or a straight edge to outline it. But this is nice because it just gives a border for you to have your artwork within and the Zentangle inside of. So just like with the practice with the mini squares, we're going to be breaking this up into smaller sections for your Zentangles. And there's a lot of ways you could do it. You could maybe draw some sort of zigzag line. You could draw a swirl, maybe even break it up into some random triangles of different sizes. So it's really up to you completely what you want to break your shapes up into for your Zentangles. But I'm just going to do a big swirl in the middle here. And I'm going to outline it. So you could choose to outline your shape, leave it as just a swirl or whatever you do. But by outlining it here, it adds or creates even more spaces and shapes, which is nice because now I have this big shape in the middle, and then I can break this swirl up here even. So I might extend a line off of this. But from here, again, just try to break it up into some smaller sections. So maybe I'll even do a few smaller swirls within this. If you did triangles or a different shape, maybe do a couple different sizes of triangles. But you want to have different shapes to work with so you can do a bunch of different designs within what you're doing. So I might even, within this swirl, do another design. And I'm almost just outlining the spaces or the shapes that are created now. So if I look at this negative space or the shape that's in here, I can almost just outline it to break it up even more. Or over here in this bigger area, maybe I can outline this shape to create an even smaller one for more shapes to go in. Or over here looks pretty big, so I can just kind of double up and outline that too. So it keeps everything pretty consistent, but it just breaks it up and makes it easier. So one last shape here I will outline right there. So now we're going to go in and do our Zentangle designs. Remember that repetition is key, so no matter what design you choose, I would definitely try to be repeating it in different places. So I'm just going to start with this one. I'm going to do just a basic design. So I'm just going to do some circles to fill the space here. So once this shape is filled, I might pick one or two other sections to do the same pattern in before I move on to a different pattern. And I'm going to make the circles at the bottom a little bit bigger just to speed things up for this video. And you could do that too. You could either keep it consistent or you can change the scale or change the size, because that actually looks nice having different sizes there. So totally up to you. But I'm not going to do the same design directly next to what I just created. Otherwise, these two shapes would blend in too much. So I'm going to jump to somewhere or a few shapes over, so maybe this one here, and do the same design. So that way, by having that repetition, it's going to tie everything together so that it doesn't look like I just have a lot of random designs. It's going to make everything come together really nicely and become unified. So that's really important to try to have repetition in order to unify your artwork. So there's another one, and then maybe I'll do one more of the circles in this area over here. So I'm just going to draw some circles, trying to repeat things. Again, I could either make a lot of really small circles, I could make a lot of bigger circles, or kind of change it up like what I'm doing. So every row I'm kind of doing a different size. And that just makes it interesting. It adds some variety to my composition. All right, so now I have a few repeated. I might even want to do like one over here or one more over here. But I'm going to move on and do another design. So maybe for this one, I'm going to do just lines. So I'm going to follow that line that I already have there and just continue that across the shape. And this could be one where it's a very detailed Zentangle shape. So maybe once I have these lines drawn, I could go in between the lines and do something even smaller. So with Zentangles, you're breaking things up into smaller shapes, and then you can continue and do smaller and smaller shapes as you go. So maybe in this, I'm going to do now a zigzag pattern in every other line. So I'm just going to fill in every other line with a zigzag pattern. And I'll just do a few here so you can kind of get the idea. But again, to repeat that design, I'm going to jump over to another square. So maybe this one in the corner. I'm going to draw my lines. And then once all of those lines are drawn, I'm going to again do that zigzag pattern. Or maybe in this one you decide to change it up, and instead of the zigzag pattern, you do something else inside of those lines. Now if you are doing lines like this, since it's practice, I wouldn't worry about it. But when you get to your final sketchbook cover, I would highly recommend using some sort of straight edge, whether it's a ruler or the edge of a piece of paper, just to keep those lines straight. But then I would do, again, every other line with that triangle pattern or zigzag pattern. So now I would think maybe one more space, so I could maybe do those lines here. But again, I'm going to move on and go into this bigger swirl section. Now this is kind of my focal point, so the area of my piece that I want the most attention drawn to, because it stands out, it takes up a big section. So I want to come up with something really interesting for this. And I would definitely recommend for yours having a big section as well, where you can have that focus where everyone kind of looks to first in your artwork, which is called a focal point. So for this one, maybe I would start with some sort of interesting flower design. So I'm just going to draw some flower petals around this. And then I'm going to, off of that, have another little circle next to it and just kind of repeat my flower pattern. Remember, Zentangles are just kind of like doodles. You can do whatever you want. But if I draw these flowers in here, there still would be a lot of space left afterwards. So I would then go in and maybe think about what I want to do to fill the space behind these flowers, or how they can connect together. So maybe within those spaces, I have just some kind of swirls coming off of each petal to fill up the space, or maybe I have those lines in the background. But I want to do something that's going to kind of stand out and be interesting here. So I would go in, try to fill up everything else. Remember that you do want to have just constant design. So even though I have flowers and a design in this swirl, I can still go back in and break these flowers up even more. So I can then maybe draw lines in the petals or little circles in the petals. Any sort of design that you think would be interesting for your project. So go ahead, fill up the whole page. Remember to break it into your sections. I would recommend having at least 5 or 6 big sections, and then going from there, breaking it up into even smaller ones as you go. When you're finished with your page, an addition that you can do is go in with a pencil and shade in different areas. And I will have a video that shows that for an addition that you can add to your project.